Hey everyone, Carlo here from All You Can Board. I'm here with my cousin Dylan as always, and today we're doing episode 3 of this series that we call Own It, Play It, Skip It. This is basically where we each take 3 games and we do these sort of mini reviews, and we tell you where from our perspective is the game worth owning, playing, so just trying it out kind of thing, or skipping it altogether. So again, we've done a couple of these before. You can go, we'll probably leave a couple links in the description below for the other videos if you want to check them out in case you missed those. But otherwise, I think I'm just going to throw it right over to Dylan to start off with
with
his first game here. Yeah.
All right. So the first game I'm going to look at today for a little mini review is Brew. You may have heard of Brew. It's been popping up on social media for different places this year. It's from Pandasaurus Games. Brew is one we played with 4 players, which I would argue that sometimes 4 players is rarely like the best player had to start a first play with a game.
If all 4 players are new, yeah.
But that's how we did it, and we all had we all enjoyed the experience for sure. And it is a really beautiful game when it's all set up on the table and everything. There's some really interesting mechanics going on. I think my favorite part about Brew, I'm going to ask you what your favorite part about it is after as well, and then we can each talk about maybe what is our least favorite part.
Sure.
But my favorite part is the battling for the seasonal territories with your dice, because it felt like an area control game, like I'm scaled down area control game using your dice, but the battle was really contentious there, and it was extra contentious because we had someone in our game there's this ability called Scorch, where you can basically make a space inaccessible, or in some cases an entire terrain inaccessible, which he was doing a lot of just to watch the world burn. So that made it extra contentious because there was less spots for us to vie for, but that to me was the most interesting thing. I loved the battle for supremacy, moving dice and finally finding ways using your ability to say, well, I guess I could manipulate it by doing this and putting my die on top or whatever. There were so many little tricks you could do, and you could hold back and wait until the very end to do them, so you could see people holding their cards close to their chest and everything. That to me was the most fun I had with Brew, is just that section of the game. But there's obviously a bunch of other really great things about it, like the training and recruiting creatures is really cool. There's a whole variety of different ones, and you don't, because everyone's grabbing from the available piles, even though you may see all the creatures in a game, I won't personally get to use all the creatures in a game, and my abilities won't necessitate me going for specific ones, maybe.
Right.
So depending on which character you're using, you might play the game differently. That's a whole other thing. Each of the characters have their own unique ability, which means that every time you play, you can play with a different one, have a bit of a different experience. It'll feel like it's nudging you towards a certain play style, but I think every character has the ability to play on the opposite side with no ability, so then you can just sort of have an even playing field.
Yeah.
Less fun. But what was your favorite thing about Brew? The thing that when you think back and remember playing it that you enjoyed?
I would say it might be the dice part that you mentioned. I really like the aspect of everyone rolls their dice and then it's open information. So I kind of liked looking around the table and seeing, because there's the fire dice where you can cover up other people's dice and mess with their spots, or the wind die does something. I kind of like the aspect of, after you roll, looking around the table and trying to anticipate what everyone's doing.
Yeah.
Because there's other parts of the game where, you see what type of creatures someone has, and okay, they're probably going to go for that land type. There's other things that are more, not obvious, but that you can kind of see. Whereas with the dice, that's where you don't know, when is that person going to use that die, and trying to figure out that little puzzle of how is everyone going to use theirs, and the timing aspects. I think was probably my favorite part about it.
Yeah, and another thing I'll mention quickly, I just remembered, is the main board that has sort of these action spaces that are always available. There's 4 rounds in the game for 4 seasons, and it flips to the opposite side, to the day and night, I think is what it's considered.
Yeah.
And the actions actually change, so you can't rely on certain actions being out the entire game. They're only going to be active 2 of the rounds, so you have to kind of factor that into your strategy. So there's a lot of really cool things going on. This is, I guess I haven't even said yet, this is going to be a play it, not an own it for me. And the reason is that more and more these days I kind of approach board games, because we're playing so many, in the same way that I approach certain movies, where when I watch a movie, do I think, I could watch that again anytime and I would enjoy it, right? That's not the benchmark to whether I enjoy a game or not. But if a game doesn't leave me with that feeling of, I want to play that again right away, I start asking, why is that? What is it about it?
Yeah.
And I think we even talked about this before we started filming, but with Brew, I think that we felt like we saw most of what Brew had to offer from one play. And that might have been, it probably likely was because we played with 4 players. We're going through more of the cards.
Yeah, we saw all the character powers and stuff.
Yeah, so it's likely because of the way we chose to introduce ourselves to it. But we felt the same kind of way with Coimbra, which is a game we both really enjoyed playing. I've heard a lot of people say they love it. It was high up on Alex Board Game Co.'s list for best games of all time. So that game, the issue we had as well was just that it felt like we saw everything because we went through all the cards and everything. I think when we played Brew, we went through pretty much all the creature cards or all the potions. One of them, we went through all of them.
Yeah.
And because we each had our own strategy, I felt like I'd seen all the strategies available in the game based on like the starting powers. Obviously, that'll change each game and who's playing, but it just felt like we didn't. There's not as much left to discover with Brew as some games where you think like it's going to be very different every time you play. So.
For sure.
Again, that'd be very different player counts, but that's sort of one of the things that kept it from being an own it for me. I think you need to try it for yourself and say, is this a game I want to come back to enough that I'm going to want to own it in my collection? Where for me, I'm undecided so far. And I think you mentioned as well, it's listed at 45 to 90 minutes, so I guess 90 minutes would be considered the 4 players. But because we were, even if we take out the teach, because it was our first play, I think it came in closer to 2.5 hours for our first
definitely
play.
Over 2 hours, which felt long for a game like this.
Yeah, and even at an hour and a half, I would argue that for a game like for what it is probably longer than I want it to be. I get that that's a 4 players, but I almost feel like this would have been the perfect like hour game where you could knock off a game of Brew in an hour every time.
45 to an hour would be the sweet spot.
So maybe 3 players is the sweet spot to play it at. But yeah, that's what's keeping it from being an own it for me. It's a play it. I think you should try it out. I think that there's a good chance you will really enjoy it. I think you just need to decide for yourself if you're going to enjoy it enough to come back to it often enough to have it in your collection. And that's sort of the question I don't have an answer to yet.
No, I think that's fair. I totally agree with you. It would be a play for me as well.
Yeah, that is Brew from Pandasaurus Games.
All right. So the first one I'm going to be talking about today is called Nanga Parbat. So this is designed by Steve Finn, who you might recognize as the designer of Biblios. And this is published by Dr. Finn's Games. I will mention right now this was sent to us as a review copy. We've already done a how to play video on our channel, so I'm not going to talk too much about how the game is played because you can go check out the how to play video. It's also available to play for free on Board Game Arena. I highly recommend you try it out on there. But the basic idea is it's a 2-player only game. Takes about 30 minutes to play, and you basically have a board that you and your opponent are competing over where there's these 6, like you're on a mountain and there's basically 6 little like levels of the mountain or 6 sections, and each section has 6 little segments in it. And so these 36 spots are all filled up with different types of animals at the start of the game, and you're basically placing hikers moving up the mountain with the help of these Sherpas. You're trapping animals to acquire them onto your own player mat, and then on future turns you can spend those animals to use different abilities. Like one animal might let you swap the places of other animals on the map, or might let you move some of your hikers around. And there's these sort of timed scoring events that happen throughout the game where you're only going to score, I think it's 5 times, but you have to choose, right? Like there's that push your luck element of, do I want to score for this type of thing right now, or do I want to try and collect more of these types of animal, or move my hikers into a better spot to get a better score when I do actually score? There's an interesting little leapfrog mechanic where if you're behind but then you score points and you land on the same point spot as your opponent, you kind of jump ahead of them. So there's this kind of like tug of war and push and pull back and forth thing. There's a lot of the stuff that we like a lot in 2-player only games. I've played this about probably 6 or 7 times, a couple times on Board Game Arena, played it with you once. I also played it with my wife a few times. I've enjoyed it every time. I think it's a really good game. It, for me, is going to fall also, like Brew, under the play it or try it category here. It's tough because for a 2-player only game, like we've talked before about how games that are only 2 players are like sort of harder to justify buying or keeping because you can only have so many 2-player only games, right? Yeah. Like how often are you going to just play 2 players?
Unless that's all you play is 2-player
for
games.
Sure.
Maybe that your entire collection
or if you're primarily 2-player, then maybe it makes more sense. But for me, like there's only a certain amount of 2-player only gaming I do, and when you find these, all-time favorite classic games, those tend to hit the table over and over. So this was one that I could see, and I've heard of it been very divisive. Like I've seen other people online say they didn't like it at all, fell flat. Seen other people say it's one of the best 2-player games they've played. For me, it's not going to be quite like the first or second go-to game if I were to have it on my shelf.
Yeah.
But it's also something that I think it does enough, kind of different than any other 2-player game with that kind of area control. It's very thinky. There's a lot of kind of like looking at the board state and trying to figure out which animal abilities to use when and where to try to get these little advantages. I don't know. You seem to enjoy it when we played it as well.
Yeah, I did like it. It falls in a really weird spot for me as well because if I'm thinking of it from the standpoint of, would I go out and buy this game to have in my collection? Because there's other 2-player games that I enjoy in this time frame more, or even with these mechanics or some of the the gameplay elements, probably wouldn't own it, right? And for me, it might end up being a skip it only because it's like, not because it's a bad game, more because I'd much rather play something else, or I'd recommend something else, right? But I did really enjoy it, and it is a game that, it's hard sometimes to find a game that's like, it does something that's interesting, I haven't seen that before, or that's different, I've never seen it done that way before. And Nanga Parbat did have a few of those moments where I'm like, that's really cool, like the way the abilities came into play with the different animals, and again, like the area control, the way it's done on that mountain and stuff. There was enough stuff that I really liked that I would always be very interested to play it, and I would jump onto Board Game Arena and be like, I'm going to try a session of this, but I don't know whether I would actually put it in my collection. So play it makes sense to me, but I think you definitely need to try it out to see, compare it to the other 2-player games in your collection, and say how many do you have, and is this going to earn a spot on your table very often, right?
Right, and I think part of what would hold me back from making Own It too is even for introducing new players, I think once you've played this a bunch, there are other 2-player games we talk about, like Battle Line and Lost Cities, that are games that are really easy to teach to a new player. This, I think, has a bit more of a barrier, and if someone has played it a lot, internalizing how to use the animals, there's going to be definitely an imbalance from player to player. But I have to say, because of the variable setup, it is a different puzzle to solve every time, where all the different animals are laid out. So it's a very cool game, very definitely worth checking out for everyone out there. But that's going to be a play it from me. That is Nanga Parbat.
Nice. What does Nanga Parbat mean? Is that the name of the mountain or something?
I believe it is the name of the mountain, yes.
Got it. All right. My next game I'm going to take a look at is Canopy. This just arrived for me a little while ago. I actually didn't. I was going to say I backed this, but I late pledged this because I missed the actual campaign. I'm really glad I did because I really love Canopy. So this is from Tim Eisner, who's also one of the designers of Tidal Blades, another game I really like. Canopy is a really simple card game, and I love simple games that do something that right away hook me and want me to come back and explore it and see what else the game has to offer. And this one seems to have a lot to offer. I've played it a handful of times already. It's felt different enough each time. It uses a unique drafting system, which I think is called the Winston draft. Is that it? Yeah. So where you basically have 3 piles of cards, and you have to start with the first pile, and you look at it, and if you don't want the cards that are in that pile, you have to put it down and add a new face down card to it that you don't know what it is, and you look at the next pile, and you keep doing that until you take a pile, or you end up taking off the top of the deck blind if there's anything left in the deck. So it keeps adding cards to it, and you might say, I don't want this now, but how many cards do I need to add to this to make the bad cards worth it to take, kind of thing, right? So you're rarely going to get a whole pile of cards that's just exactly what you want. It happens, but more often than not, you're having to take some cards you don't want, and there's some disease cards, and there's some fire cards and things like that. They're going to either send your wildlife cards away or send your plant cards away and affect your scoring. So you're trying to balance your tableau between the plants you're collecting, the animals you're collecting, and you can do things to affect your opponent's board too, because if you get a certain number of disease cards, instead of just losing your own animals, your opponent will now lose some as well, which means that if you see them going for something, you might want to get these negative cards. There's a lot of really cool interaction going on, and it's pretty thinky when it comes down to it, because the fact that you can make those decisions, and it's not just, disease bad, I don't want disease. The fact that I can be like, man, he's getting those abilities and he's getting those points. Do I want to stop him from doing that and take an extra disease card? I'll lose something, but so will he. Right. So there's a lot of stuff you're considering. It's played over 3 rounds. The whole thing with the actual canopy is the name of the game, where you have to cap certain trees, and if you take a canopy, you have to cap a tree if it's possible. You want to have the tallest tree at the end of each round, but you also want to have as many trees as you can. Once a tree's been capped, you can no longer score for tallest tree in subsequent rounds. So there's so many things you're balancing that there's actually a lot of interesting stuff going on. Every time I've played, I've had a really good time, and I've been surprised how much it's not wearing off on me. Certain games I play like 2 or 3 times, and I say, okay, that first time I was enamored, and now it's starting to fade.
The novelty wears off or whatever. Yeah.
This one, it's for how simple it is and how fun it is. I can now see this being a game that stays in my collection for a while, and also one that I bring out for people I'm introducing games to for the first time, or that we want a really quick game, or a game that still feels meaty but doesn't take an hour to play. I'm honestly super surprised by this game. It's one of my most pleasant surprises from 2021. So this is definitely an own it for me, and I'm hoping that this, because I don't think this is like super well known game. It did well, but I don't think it's one that everyone's talking about. And I think that more people should be aware of Canopy, because it's inexpensive. The components are great. The gameplay is awesome. For me, it just hits all the marks.
Yeah, it does a lot of cool stuff. Like you said, I really like that Winston draft, which I only ever saw playing like the 2-player version of Agricola where you do the draft. But even just when you were talking about this, I realized how many elements of push your luck are in this game. And we don't think of it as a push your luck game, but not only the drafting, looking at piles, thinking, oh, I could take this, but what's in that next pile? You want to keep pushing, but also when to cap your trees. I think when we played, I pushed my luck too much. Like I tend to always do in push your luck games. I kept trying to hold off, make this epic tree for the end, and then I didn't even get the canopy that I needed, right?
We need people to tell us out there which push your luck games have the biggest swings for when you actually like push your luck as much as you can, because those are the games that you're probably gonna love now, because when you push your luck like crazy, if you get
I think Can't Stop is the ultimate. We've played on board game reviews. If you push your luck and you move way up those tracks and you actually lock that in, like there's nothing people can do to catch up other than also push their luck, and then if they crash out, it's just extra funny.
Incl Gold too, though. Like there's been times where like the amount you push your luck, all of a sudden you're getting so many gems, and then other times it just like completely falls flat. But we need to push your luck games with Carlo. If you're ever wanting to play a certain board game with Carlo, if you meet us at a convention, just bring out the push your luck games. You're gonna see.
I'll usually just end with 0 points.
That is Canopy.
All right, next one I'm going to be talking about is a big one here. This is Kingdom Rush Rift in Time.
This is one of your favorite games.
Not quite. So I've talked about this on the channel before. Oh yeah, sorry. This is co-designed by Senfuang Lim, Helena Hope, and Jesse Wright, and published by Lucky Duck Games. So I've talked about this in a couple of videos on the channel before. Spoiler alert, I did talk about this in a curating my collection video, so this will be leaving my collection. I just haven't actually gotten rid of it yet. But this is basically a game that can play from solo up to 4 players. If you're playing with 2 to 4, it's a cooperative game. And it's basically a scenario-based... Here, I'm going to lay this box down now. It's basically a scenario-based game with polyomino tiles where each player plays as a character, like a hero. There's like a mage, not a knight, but whatever, like a rogue or an archer. There's all different types of characters, and you have different abilities, and you have a little map with these little hordes that are coming towards you that they have enemies on, and you're basically trying to use your abilities to send out these little different shaped tiles to cover up the hordes on the trays, to eliminate them before they march to your base and do a certain amount of damage. So you're basically trying to like withstand the onslaught. I myself haven't played the Kingdom Rush video games, like the mobile apps and stuff, but that's what this is based off of. I'll say right now, this is a skip it for me. This is one that I was expecting to like a lot more. I bought it planning to play a lot of it solo. I played through 3 of the scenarios, lost a couple times, had to reset up. There were just a few barriers that kept me from really wanting to ever go back to this game or being able to recommend it to other people. So... And I can see, like, I don't think it's a poorly designed game or anything. Like, there are people out there who I think will really like this, but I think it has to be for specific reasons. So first off, the rulebook, in my opinion, was a little bit too wordy and wasn't organized in the best way. Like, there's parts where it talks about the wind condition, saying, like, oh, you look in the scenario book and tells you the wind condition, and then you look in that spot and there isn't actually the wind condition, and it's in somewhere else, hidden in the middle of the rulebook, and I had to go on the FAQ on Board Game Geek quite a few times to look up stuff for clarity. It's also like I like games that are punishing. I like games that are difficult, especially playing solo, scenario games, co-op games. I like it when I lose and I have to try again, but the try again has to feel fun. It can't just, like, for this game I found it was so punishing to make one little wrong move and then to have to, like, reset everything up is very time consuming because I won't get into it, but it's a very just like time consuming game to get set up on the table and put away. So if you're not going to get it on the table and then let it sit there for like a few days and play through a bunch of scenarios or whatever, like the overhead of the amount of time it took me to like learn the game, refresh on the rules, go on Board Game Geek to check stuff, like I wasn't enjoying it enough based on the amount of time I put in. And the thematics of the game, like, it's weird how we talked about this. I asked you if it was like this in the mobile app, and you said no, but it's like you put out your towers, and then at the end of your turn or the round, your towers come back to your hand. The ones you didn't play, you upgrade them, but the ones you did play come back to your hand. And like to me, I was like, why do your towers leave the map? Why do they come back to your hand? Like, thematically, it just seemed very odd to me, and like.
And it's been a while since I played the mobile app, but I'm like, and you like, there's multiple scenarios in the mobile app, right?
Yeah.
Like, but I'm pretty sure in each scenario you keep your towers until the end, or unless they get destroyed or something. There's definitely no hand that they're coming back to. So I know that some of this is probably a symptom of how do we adapt this to a board game, but it just seems like the answer being we adapt by doing this weird thematic thing where the towers return to you is kind of strange. But again, I haven't played it, so I don't know. I'd have to I can't speak to it fully like you can. But it seemed weird when you were describing it.
For sure. And I'm sure, like, mechanically, the way the game works, like, it probably makes sense. But just, like, I would rather than the towers be weaker and stay out, rather than it be like, well, it would be too powerful if they stay out on the map, so we have to send them back. Or, like, maybe it's to make room for new towers and stuff. And then even just, like, all the characters across, like, yeah, they have certain different abilities, but I just found scenario to scenario, playing different characters, like, it never felt all that different, and for how long each scenario takes, it just felt like a bit of a slog to, like, figure out how to properly set up these polyomino pieces. I don't know, I really wanted to like this game, I really wanted to give it a chance, even after I didn't really like the first couple scenarios. I played another one, and I just couldn't get there, so I don't know, I think, and the reason why I don't put this in the play it or try it category is that it's a lot of rules to learn and a lot of time to invest to just try it out once. And if you're not going to really like it and want to invest in it, I don't think it's worth just trying it out. So, I mean, if it really speaks to you and you want a scenario game with polyominoes, like, you might know that this is for you, but for me, it's hard for me to recommend it.
Yeah, first thing I'll mention is I do have Kingdom Rush Elemental Uprising. I backed it, and it will be coming this year. So I'm going to dive into Kingdom Rush, the board game, with that version. I'll have my thoughts on that. But it is interesting when you describe, liking the feeling of losing or a punishing game to know that you're having to earn that victory. It's tough with board games because the more complex the board games, the more setup, the more components, the harder it is of a sell for a game to be punishing because it requires more of you in the upkeep, being like, oh, it's awesome that this game's super punishing and it takes me a lot to beat, but now I got to spend 10 minutes resetting everything up, shuffling these cards. Like, whereas in a video game like Dark Souls, right? If it's punishing and I die, I just spawn
press
again,
a button, try again. Yeah.
So I'm frustrated, but I'm right back in. If Dark Souls required me to go through 10 minutes of loading screens, I don't think I'd play Dark Souls, right? So it's interesting because the more complex you make a game, I wonder if you have to think as a designer, how punishing can I really make this? Because can I expect people to be okay with having to reset everything up, right?
Right.
You don't want that to be like a barrier where we don't make tough board games that are complex, but it's just an interesting thing. And I'll have to see that for myself in Elemental Uprising, or maybe we can compare and see if there's any like differences between difficulty or mechanics or whatever. But yeah, interesting. I think I'll probably enjoy it more than you because I played Kingdom Rush, the video games and stuff, but I'm wondering how much I'm gonna. I was expecting to just love Elemental Uprising, and now I'm not sure.
And I was expecting to really like this. It was a really big surprise for me that I was this disappointed in it. And I will say real quick, if you are looking for like a solo game that has kind of a campaign or scenarios that you can play on your own that are kind of like puzzly in a way, I would recommend like the Cloudspire solo mode is amazing, and also I played through Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion solo, and both of those, even though they were tough and I could lose and have to reset things up, it didn't bother me. Like the gameplay was fun enough that I was eager to go back, whereas this one just didn't quite pull me in the same way. So unfortunately this one is a skip it. That is Kingdom Rush Rift in Time.
Okay, and the last game I'm going to take a look at today is Neoville, and this is from Phil Walker Harding, one of my favorite designers, and from Blue Orange Games. So Neoville is a game that I featured on one of my games I'm excited for because I do like Phil Walker Harding games and the 3D towers and everything at the time. We didn't even know that much at the time, but it just looked really intriguing to me. And then I kind of forgot about Neoville, and I was honestly in a bookstore here in Winnipeg, and I just saw it on the shelf, and I said, oh my god, I didn't know Neoville was out, and I featured this. I'm like, okay, I have to buy it. It was a reasonable price. So I bought it. I've played it, I think, like 4 times now. So it is a very simple game. Like in terms of we have a rules video on our channel. It's about 6 minutes to learn. It's very simple. All you're really doing is taking a tile from the display, adding it to your personal city. You're going to make a 4x4 city. It's kind of like King Domino in that way, where you have a certain type of city you're going to build, and when you reach that, the game ends. You won't see every tile in this game like you will I guess in King Domino. It depends on what your player count is, but whatever the stack is, you're not going to get through it all in Neoville. So if you're waiting for something, it might not come out. But the big twist in the game is you're adding these skyscrapers and utilities to your board. It's optional. Every single time you add a tile, you can add one of these to it. The skyscrapers will earn you their points listed on them if they end up on a terrain grouping, which they call a district, of that exact size. So if it says 10 on it, it wants to be in a district of 10. If you don't achieve that, you actually lose the points. It's not that you don't get the points, you actually get minus 10 points. So there's a big detriment. You have to really say, am I going to take the risk to place this? Do I think I can complete it? I would say that the first time you play, you think it's a bigger risk than it is. Generally, I've been able to achieve what it is that I need to set out to do. And to be fair, I feel like I haven't played this at 4 yet. Maybe at 4, the tiles are going quicker, that you might find that, oh man, like someone else is also going for this terrain type, and then it gets harder. But I found that like in the early turns, taking a 12, you're likely going to be able to get the 12. It really comes down to those, halfway through the game. Am I going to get a 6 if I take a 6 with what's left? Am I going to get an 8? Like, do I just have to leave that there? But if I'm behind, is that going to be the difference? Do I have to go for an 8 to try to win the game? So there's enough interesting decisions that I really have enjoyed every single play of this. And the people I've played it with, I think I played it with you once, and another person I played with it twice now, and they've requested to play it again. They've really liked it. It's simple, but there's enough... just in the same way as King Domino, there's enough strategy and things you're thinking about going on that it still doesn't feel like it's mindless. Like you're not just like saying, oh, I'm just grabbing tiles, we'll see what happens. You're still trying to win. The utilities are really interesting, and because you won't have every utility available every game, there is some variety there in them, and some of them are really intricate where they have to be at the cross section. I would almost say anytime you play Neoville, play with the ecomobiles, I think it is, because they're the most interesting utility, and the fact that they have to be at the intersection of... to call them in a row and have to have certain things in them, it makes it way more interesting to lay out your city.
Those are the ones we didn't play with when I played with you, and I still enjoyed it though.
And that's the only time I didn't play with them, and it felt like not a lesser version of Neoville, but it just felt less interesting. So I would almost recommend playing with the ecomobiles every time and then using your choice of biodomes or windmills as the other utility. But for me, it's a play it. I wanted it. I was expecting going in that it was going to be an Own It. When I was seeing it on the shelf and thinking of buying it, because I do love Phil Walker Harding, it just didn't quite land as much as some of his other games have. Some of his other games are like mainstays of my collection. Neoville is one I will probably keep for a while, and because so many people that I'm playing with seem to love coming back to it. But it's not necessarily one that I think after 10, 15 plays, I'm going to think, oh, there's still lots more for me to discover there, or I'm still having the same feeling when I play it. So I would recommend checking it out. It's not super expensive, and it is really easy for a lot of different people to play and different ages to play. So I think it's one that'll be a hit, but I don't know whether it's one you're going to want to like necessarily keep in your collection.
Yeah, that's fair. I enjoyed it quite a bit the time we played it with 2 players, and I'm also curious to see how different it would be with 3 or 4, because not only the competing for the skyscrapers, but even just the tiles in front of you. I just wonder if there's the game is less in your control, and with the state of what's available changing more from turn to turn, it might be harder to get stuff done. But I did like that aspect of late game, trying to figure out like how can I squeeze out a few more. I only have 3 turns. What kind of skyscraper do I really want to try taking? There's a bit of that pushing your luck or trying to take a gamble on seeing how many points you can maybe get.
For sure, and that's the I don't want to say the issue, but that's the thing to consider with tile games where there's a market you have to choose from when you play them at 2, is that if there's 2 tiles out there that I could like, either one will work for my case, and you're going, I know I'm guaranteed one, because you're even if you take one of the ones I need, I'll take the other one. Right? So that makes it a little bit less interesting to 2 players because you feel more safe. In a 4-player game, you can look out there, but you can't bank saying, when it gets back to me, I'll take that one, because you have to go through 3 other players' turns, right? Yes, more tiles will be refreshed, but I think that's why some of these games, they're just more interesting at higher player counts.
For sure.
I don't know whether 4 is the ideal count for this, because maybe that makes it too long of a game, but I would say at least 3 to have more going on and competition would be probably my recommendation.
Cool.
Yeah. That is Neoville.
All right. And the final one I'm going to be talking about today is a game called HADRIAN'S Wall. So this is designed by Bobby Hill and published by both Renegade Game Studios and Garphill Games. So this is it's for 1 to 6 players, takes about an hour, and it is a heavy roll and write. This is absolutely by far the heaviest roll and write I've played. It's the type of game that feels like it could have been made as just like a board game that would have been fairly heavy, and converting it into roll and write form made it a smaller box and made them kind of like save on components and stuff. It's done in a very clever way, but basically you get 2 giant sheets of paper, and you're basically trying to build up all of your resources to defend Hadrian's Wall. So you have the actual wall that you can extend and get your cohorts ready to sort of defend those 3 lanes that at the end of every round you'll be attacked on 3 different lanes, and you have to sort of defend them. And if you don't, you get like disdain, which is going to like give you a bunch of negative points at the end of the game. There's different areas all over where you can, you're getting, basically the game plays over 6 rounds, and every round you start off by turning over a card that tells you what resources you're going to get and what type of like meeples. So you'll get a certain number of these resources, and there's like civilians and builders and soldiers and stuff like that. And it's an open thing where you don't really take turns. Everyone's just playing simultaneously, and you're just kind of, I'll place this, I'll pay a civilian to do this. And you color something in, and it maybe combos into something else. So in true roll and write fashion, there's tons of those combos where you spend something here, it gives you another thing, you're sitting there taking more meeples out of the supply. I've only played this solo so far, and from what I understand, that seems like it's going to be the best player count because of the fact that every round, there's 6 rounds, and every round, like if we were playing together, I might do something, like I might not have a great turn and it might be quick, I just do this, I don't combo that many things. You might have all these crazy combos going on, and then suddenly like I'm done and I'm just watching you,
right.
Or we're both heads down doing like, we talk sometimes about like games where people feel like they're all doing their own thing, and to me those are fine if it's short, but if it takes a while what you're doing and then you're waiting for other people to do their stuff, and it's like it feels almost like each person is doing a really complicated crossword puzzle on their own, and then you're just watching other people. The interaction, there's certain things where certain cards come out, and it's like based on what your neighbor has, you can do some things. There's very little interaction, but honestly for me as a solo game, this has been amazing. This is already going to be, it's for sure already one of my favorite roll and writes, has the potential after a few more plays. This might end up being my favorite roll and write. This is definitely going to be an own it for me. I love how thematic everything is. There's one entire sheet has different sections where you have like a gladiator like Colosseum where you can train gladiators to fight. You can build like theaters and gardens, and you can trade goods. It's just so clever the way everything is done, and it's so satisfying to sort of start getting an engine going and figure out which meeples do I need or which can I cash in here to get these, and now that lets me do that other thing that I didn't think I was going to be able to do this round. I've played it I think 3 times now. And I also appreciate how much at the end of the game there's so many spots on your sheet you didn't get to, so it really feels like it's always begging you to come back and try a different strategy. This time do a lot of scouting, this time really train your gladiators early and try to use them as much as you can throughout the game. It feels very different every time. I think it comes with 100 of each sheet, so like there's tons of value in here. I'll probably eventually get a couple of these sheets laminated because this won't be leaving my collection anytime. It's a great game to just pick up on like a Saturday or Sunday morning kind of thing with your cup of coffee and start the day with a nice heavy roll and write.
Yeah, I haven't played it, but everything you said about it, I'm super interested to play it now. I cannot wait, and it's funny because I had heard about this game, I had seen it talked about, I never really gave it the time of day for whatever reason, and then it was after, and when you got it, I was like, I'll play it one time, and then when you started talking about it like so emphatically, I was like, oh man, like now I really want to play it.
Yeah.
My question to you is, if it didn't have a solo mode, just pretend, if it only played 2 to 6, would it still be an own it? Would you still feel the same way, or is it because you think it's just such a great solo experience?
It's tough to say only because I've only played it solo,
right.
So it's tough to say how much that like waiting on other players aspect would deter me,
right.
But yeah, it's really tough to say.
Yeah,
honestly, I might say it would just be a play it if it wasn't solo, because realistically, if I'm getting together with someone to play a game that's gonna like the fact that it takes at least an hour,
right,
like.
As a roll and write.
Like I don't know if I would want to play a game that takes that long with that little interaction and that much. Each player has their head down doing their own thing and then like waiting on other players. Like it was kind of a problem for me already in Super Skill Pinball, which we talked about before. Just watching someone else continue doing stuff when your turn's over, and
that's just a problem. That's something that roll and writes are working against for I think for almost forever. Is that the more complex you make a roll and write, unless you can find a way to make that roll and write not that everyone's doing their own thing, which is very hard to do in a roll and write, I think. You're just making it so that everyone's doing their own thing for longer, which I think there's probably a period of time where it's just like it becomes less fun if you've been sitting there for an hour and a half and everyone's doing their own thing. Even when we've played Welcome To every so often, we realize when we played a board game arena, everyone's like kind of sitting in silence playing, right? So I think unless you can come up with a way to do a roll and write where everyone's very interactive, I think the closest I've seen is cartographers with switching your paper to the other person. Sure. But outside of that, like it just there's a limit to how complex you can make a roll array and not have that be an issue. So yeah, I can see that like as a solo game could be very different from a 6-player game of
Yeah,
Hadrian's
honest
Wall.
one I remember because when you came over not that long ago, and you remember
Yeah.
you said like, oh, we should try this sometime, and I was almost like, ooh, I almost don't even want to try it with 2 players. Like, I would rather teach you the rules,
And you take
play
it.
a sample turn, and then say, here, borrow it and play it solo. Like, it
Yeah.
feels weird to say that, but like, that's how much I prefer the solo mode over how much I think I would actually like playing with more players.
But then it won't be on your shelf, and it's gonna be in my house. So maybe
Well,
maybe you
I'll
have
just
to,
get
maybe...
a laminate. I'll laminate a couple sheets. I'll lend you the sheets. You can read the rules online, and that we
No,
can each play
no,
solo
that's
at
not
home
a-
on our own.
That's you laminate. You keep the lamination. I'll take the box.
Fair enough.
Awesome.
But yeah, that is Hadrian's Wall, a game that I was very much looking forward to thanks to Amy and Maggie of Thinker Themer, and then I played it and it actually like totally exceeded my expectations. I liked it even a lot more than I expected. So yeah, this is one I'll be playing for a long time. That is Hadrian's Wall.
Awesome. And those are the 6 games for this edition of Own It, Play It, Skip It. Let us know for all of these, the ones that you've played. Would you consider them an Own It, Play It, Skip It? Do you agree with us, disagree with us, or just what your overall thoughts on some of these games are? We'd love to hear. Or if any of these games you didn't know about and now you're going to go check out because of us. We've seen a lot of comments recently about, oh, I didn't know about this game and I backed it on Kickstarter. I didn't know about this game and I picked it up because of things we've said. And those are always, I mean, we have no stake in these games, but it's always interesting to hear that like a recommendation that we mention resonates with someone. So let us know if any of these are ones you're going to check out now.
For sure.
And also let us know if there's any games you think we should feature on Own It, Play It, Skip It in the future. We don't have to do like newer games with us. We just have so far. We want to start including some older titles. If there's any games you maybe don't want to have a full like extensive review done on it, but you'd like to hear out of those 3 what we consider it, drop it in the comments and we can consider it for future videos and let you know what we think.
Yeah, and we'll either mix in 1 or 2 old games, or maybe we'll once in a while just do like a only retro games, only older games episode. So yeah, let us know what you guys want to see.
Awesome. And that's pretty much all we got. So thanks for watching and we'll see you next time.
See ya.